Hey y'all, this is Sean Turner with Turner Flowers in Ottawa, Kansas. I want to tell you a little bit about our shop, a little bit about what it's like being a florist, and kind of what we're up against right now with the whole COVID-19 deal. Our flower shop was started in 1936 by my grandfather out on the same farm that folks and I still live on. Started with a greenhouse and a sawmill and diversified farming operations and dairy cattle and beef cattle, chickens, a little bit of everything, and but really focused on the flowers. And had a glass and rock greenhouse that Grandpa built himself that Dad then expanded into a half-acre greenhouse in the mid-1970s, along with having a retail flower shop in Ottawa. It was a 5 designer shop, and about the time that I was a baby in the late 80s, we decided to focus more on the greenhouse, and so that first flower shop was sold and we focused more on the greenhouse out on the farm. For those of you that are a little space challenged, a half-acre greenhouse is about half a football field of space, all under fiberglass, of all sorts of different plants and vegetables and cactus and just a little bit of everything. And growing up, I knew it was hard work. I didn't really care for it. And then I got in the greenhouse at K-State, and I realized that either Dad wasn't nuts or we were both nuts, because I absolutely loved it. And while I was at K-State in 2006, I had the opportunity to purchase another retail flower shop with my parents here in downtown Ottawa. That location had been a flower shop for 10 years before that, and a business that had been several years before that owned by one of the designers that Dad had trained in his flower shop in the 80s that he sold when I was a baby. So everything kind of comes full circle. And so since 2006, I've co-owned this shop with my folks. We do a little bit of everything. So birthdays and anniversaries, weddings and funerals and all those types of things. And when we first bought the shop, Dad said he knew I'd have a lot of high school and college friends that were getting ready to get married, and he said, go ahead and do as many of them as you can, so long as I don't have to help. And because he's not crazy about weddings, he'd rather do funeral work, and that's okay. And so we've built up the business to where I am the main wedding consultation guy, and we did about 100 weddings in 2019. And we were on track to do 100 or 125 this year in 2020, and we really haven't had any cancel so far, but we've had a lot of them reschedule. Some of them are trying to reschedule into late May, early June. Some of them have moved to September, October. Some have moved to 2021, and so it has just varied. It's going to be really interesting to see how all these different couples handle rescheduling their weddings. Venues, it's really challenging because there's some venues that can only do one wedding in a weekend. Some can do a wedding on Friday, a wedding on Saturday, a wedding on Sunday. We've had a few weddings even scheduled for Mondays and Tuesdays, depending on when it is. So the wedding industry has really taken a hit with all of these COVID restrictions. Funerals is another big part of our business. We did about 225 funerals in 2019, and I would say that the number of deaths that we've had this year have been about normal, but because of the limitations on how many people can come to a funeral, there's been a lot of different changes as well. And so, normally after a funeral home talks to the family who has lost a loved one, they'll send them over here to us. We'll visit with them about what that person did for a living and what their hobbies were, and basically really get to know the deceased and the family and how they feel about that person, and make a really personalized casket spray. And so sometimes those casket sprays have got a cowboy hat and a lariat in them, and sometimes they have a model car, a model airplane. We've buried a couple of butchers that we had their full set of butcher knives in the casket spray. Stuffed raccoons, knitting needles, crochet hooks, you name it. I've probably put it in a funeral spray or in a wedding bouquet just because they're so customized. But right now, since they can only have 10 people at a funeral, families are handling it one of two different ways. And so a few families are still doing a traditional funeral with a casket and are having just immediate family at the funeral home or at the graveside at the cemetery, and then they're broadcasting it often on the Facebook or on the funeral home website, so that loved ones who really want to attend can digitally, even though they can't be there in person. And then the other way that families are handling funerals right now is that they're doing cremations, and then they're planning to do a celebration of life or a funeral at a later date when it's safer for everybody to get together. And so the question is, how have we been largely affected by all the COVID restrictions? We're currently, through the county and the state stay-at-home orders, we're technically closed down. We've been told that we are allowed to do funeral work quietly out the back door, but that as far as other business, we're pretty much shut down at the moment. And so we have appealed with the state to try to become listed as essential, because in a lot of states, flower shops are listed as essential, especially where in the springtime we normally sell a variety of vegetable plants for gardens and food items and things like that. Things that people need if they're going to create a victory garden and do some different things to help provide their families with some low-cost food here in the spring and the summer. And so we're confident that we're going to be able to figure out something there and be able to have some business going. As far as fresh flowers themselves, that part has been a little challenging. We've got 6 agents in Kansas City that we work with most of the time. And I should start by saying most of the flowers that we use are grown in Ecuador and Colombia in South America. We use California grown, I use Oregon and Washington grown, I use Indiana grown. I use as much local product as we can, but it's still a little early in the season for that. But those 5 or 6 agents in Kansas City, they're the ones that work with the growers in California and South America to get me what I need, when I need it, and make sure it's fresh. Well, right now, because of COVID, 5 out of 6 of those agents are shut down. I have one agent that is usually a staff of 20 or 25 folks that is now running on a staff of 4. And so our salesperson is also our packer and also our delivery person, because everybody else is laid off because they're trying to minimize how many people touch everything. And so if I'm real careful, I can get 1 truck a week, and we just kind of go from there. So a lot of the casket pieces that I'm doing right now are silk, all artificial flowers, but the families seem to like that, especially if they're doing a small funeral now and then going to do a celebration of life later. They can keep it. It's going to look just as good then as it does today. Then we also have been peddling a lot of green plants as well, just because there's something else that can last, and something that we source locally. They're locally grown, and so they don't have to be shipped in, don't have to be imported, and it's something that the family can have now at the funeral and keep it alive for later for a celebration of life. And so that's been a little bit exciting. That's the biggest pieces of our business are wedding and funeral. We also do a lot of birthdays and anniversaries and just because and get wells and balloons and all sorts of different things like that. And so being closed has created a lot of challenges like that. I've got 9 part-time staff members that we've applied for the PPP government funding for paycheck protection for them. We've been approved for it. So we're able to take care of our people, but the only people that are supposed to be allowed in the building per the county right now is people out of our own household. And so we aren't able to have any of our staff come in and play right now. And they have a really close friendship and are a really creative team and enjoy working together and enjoy working with flowers. And so it's really hard on them and us both now not being able to create arrangements together and take care of folks in the way that we're used to doing. Some folks have asked about education, what education you need to be a florist. There are some floral design schools out there, but if you can find an on-the-job situation, it's the very best way to do it. I have a degree in ag education and horticulture from K-State. Loved my horticulture training, but it really does take some good on-the-job training in order to do floral design justice, and it really does take about 7 years on the job in order to be able to do anything. Sure, early on you're going to be able to do some small vase arrangements and do some bud vases and things like that, but you really do need to be at least 6 or 7 years in before you will have the confidence and the ability and know the mechanics and the physics to do anything, because all of those subjects that you'll hear your classmates in school say, gosh, when are we going to use this? We use pretty much every day in the flower shop, from geometry and algebra to biology to chemistry to physics, geography. You name it, there's something connected to one of those core subjects that we use in the flower shop on a very regular basis. And so even if it doesn't seem like it fits your career path, chances are it's going to circle back around and you're going to say, gee, I'm glad I had that class later on. So if you have any more questions about being a florist, what COVID has done for small businesses and small towns, questions about education, questions about anything like that, don't hesitate to have your instructor contact me, and I would be happy to help you in any way I can. Take care. Have a great day.